Hi guys, today we're going to be starting a new topic that is circular measure, and we're going to be thinking especially about radians. Let's get started. What is radians essentially? Well, it is just another method of measuring angles, right? Radians is another way that we can measure angles. If you think about things like distances, we can measure distances using centimeters or using inches or kilometers or miles, right? These are all different types of measurements. And the same is true with angles. You're used to using degrees so far, but you could also use a different type of measurement, which we call radians. So let's compare the two. Let's say I've got degrees here in blue. What is one full rotation in degrees? Well, in degrees, one full rotation is 360 degrees, right? That's one full rotation. So one rotation in degrees is equal to 360. I think you guys all know that. What about radians? Well, radians, one full rotation, if I go all the way around like that, is equal to 2 pi radians. Okay, so one rotation in degrees is equal to 360, and one rotation in radians is equal to 2 pi. Okay, so that's how we're going to start. That is the definition of how we're going to think about radians, that if we go one full way around, that's equal to 2 pi radians. Now, first thing we need to think about is how to convert between the two. How do we go from degrees to radians and radians to degrees, right? How do we do that? Well, instead of telling you why this works, the first thing I'm going to do is just going to tell you how to do it. So if you've got an angle in degrees, and what you want to do is you want to convert it to radians, then you've got to take that angle and multiply it by pi and divide it by 180, right? You take your angle in degrees, times it by pi, and divide by 180, you will get your angle in radians. So let's think about a couple of examples, right? Let's think about 90 degrees, right? 90 degrees, how do I convert that to radians? Well, I'm going to times by pi, and I'm going to divide by 180. 90 divided by 180 is a half. So in radians, that angle is pi by 2. Okay, let's do another example. Okay, let's say we've got 60 degrees. Okay, how do I convert that to radians? Well, I times by pi, divide by 180. Okay, and 60 divided by 180, that's going to cancel off to give a third. That's why I get pi by 3. Okay, what about another one? Let's say we have got 45 degrees. Okay, how do I convert that? Again, it's the same idea. I multiply by pi, and I divide by 180. 45 over 180, that simplifies to give a quarter. So this is pi by 4. Now, what's the big picture, guys? To convert from degrees to radians, all you got to do every single time, multiply by pi, divide by 180. That's all you're doing. Multiply by pi, divide by 180. You just got to practice that many, many, many times until it becomes second nature. Now, the question is, why does that work? Right? You can do it, but you probably want to know why that works. Well, let's have a think here. What did I just say earlier? I said that one full rotation in degrees is 360 degrees, right? 360 degrees. And what was that in radians? Right? That was 2 pi radians, right? So in other words, I can say, so write radians here, even though I don't have to, I'll write radians. Okay. One full rotation, is 360 degrees, and so 360 degrees must be equal to 2 pi radians. Well, if that's the case, then what would 1 degree be equal to? What would 1 degree be equal to? Well, I would just have to divide both sides of my equation by 360. Right? So I would get 2 pi divided by 360 radians. So if you follow that, it's just like a simple equation where I've taken 360 degrees, If I want to find 1 degree, I divide by 360. And of course, whatever I do on the left-hand side, I must also do on the right-hand side. So I divide that by 360 as well. Now, if that's the case, right, I can actually calculate what any other angle is in radians. So if I know 1 degree, I could calculate, for example, I could calculate 10 degrees, right? Because then all I've got to do is I've got to multiply both sides by 10. So I would get 10 times by 2 pi over 360. And that would give me the angle of 10 degrees in radians. And of course, I can apply that then to absolutely any angle in degrees, not just 10, but 22, 53, whatever. Let's say I've got x degrees. X can stand for any number. How do I find that? Well, I take that angle and I multiply it by 2 pi over 360. But of course, I can simplify 2 pi over 360, can't I? Because I can divide top and bottom by 2. Right, so I get pi over 180. I just rewrite that and say that multiplying x by pi divided by 180 degrees. Okay, so how do I convert from degrees on the left-hand side, right, this thing here? How do I convert from x degrees to radians? Well, I take my value of degrees x and I multiply it by pi over 180. Right? That's the rule, and that's the rationale. Well, if that's the case, we probably want to do the opposite way round, right? We want to convert from radians to degrees. So how do we do that? Well, if I take my radians, okay, well, if I converted from degrees to radians, I multiply by pi over 180. So to go the other way round, I've got to do the inverse. I've got to multiply by 180 degrees and divide by pi. Right, multiply by 180 degrees and divide by pi. So let's do several examples, right? Let's say I've got A, which is, I don't know, let's do pi by 6 radians. Okay, how do I convert that to degrees? Well, I'm going to times by 180 and I'm going to divide by pi. Okay, and what happens? Well, the pi's are going to cancel off, right? That cancels. And I'm left with 180 divided by 6 is 30 degrees. Okay, that's not too bad, is it? Try another one. Let's try B. Let us say we've got pi by 4. Okay, how do I convert that to degrees? I multiply by 180 degrees and I divide by pi. So the pi's cancel off. That I've got 180 divided by 4, and 180 divided by 4 is 45. So pi by 4 in radians is 45 degrees. Okay, let's do one last one. Let's say I've got 3 pi upon 2. To convert that, I've got to multiply by 180 degrees over pi. And again, you can see that the pi's cancel off. And so I'm left with 3 times by 180 divided by 2. Well, 180 divided by 2 is 90, so then I've got 90 times by 3, which is 270 degrees. Now, what is the thing that you're always doing? You are multiplying by 180 divided by pi, multiplying by 180 divided by pi. So, to recap, to convert from degrees to radians, times by pi, divide by 180. To go the opposite way round, from radians to degrees, you multiply by 180, and divide by pi. And you've just got to go away and practice this. But again, if you're someone who wants to know the reason why this works, let's go back. Let's think about our definition. Our definition is that one full rotation, right? One rotation in radians is equal to 2 pi. Right? So 2 pi radians is one full rotation. But we also know that in degrees, that's equal to 360. Right? So 2 pi radians is equal to 360. So then, what is 1 radian going to be equal to? Well, to go from 2 pi radians to 1 radian, what have I got to do? Well, I've got to divide by 2 pi. Right? Just treat it like an equation. I divide this side by 2 pi. Well, if I divide the left-hand side by 2 pi, I've also got to divide the right-hand side by 2 pi. Okay, so I'm going to end up here with 360 degrees divided by 2 pi. And if you want, I can cancel that off straight away, right? Because 360 divided by 2 pi, I can divide top and bottom by 2. If I divide top and bottom by 2, what I'm going to get is 180 degrees divided by pi. So let me just write that there instead. This thing is 180 degrees divided by pi. We figured out that 1 radian is 180 degrees divided by pi. So how can I get x radians, right? Where x can just stand for any number, x radians. How am I going to do that? Well, what I've got to do, surely, is I've got to multiply this side by x. I'm going to multiply by x. If I multiply that side by x, I'm also going to multiply this side by x. I'm going to be left with x times by 180 degrees over pi. And so you see what that shows us is if I've got x radians, what's that equal to in degrees? Well, it's equal to my x times by 180 divided by pi. I want to convert from radians to degrees. That's the reason I multiply by 180 divided by pi, and it all comes from the central definition, the key definition, that for one full rotation in radians is 2 pi, whereas in degrees it was 360. So guys, go away, practice it, keep converting, do it. It'll be very easy. You just got to practice, and then we'll come back with another video explaining what exactly radians are. Take care. I will see you again next time.